Is a reading of Revolting, Eco-Absurdist Rebellion by Julian Langer. This is chapter 3, 4, chapter 4? Yeah, chapter 4. My rebellion against work and Thoreau. During the 2021 Manchester Anarchist Book Fair, when I was tabling beside my soon-to-be publisher Forged Books, I interrupted a conversation where they were encouraging the attendee to read Bob Black's The Abolition of Work. As a teenager, I appreciated Black's writings, but without thinking and out of a lack of appreciation for what value was being affirmed in the essay, I interrupted by stating that there are other, better, anti-work, situationist and post-situationist writings. My friend Lou combated my interruption by stating that the essay still has its place and is worth reading for Black's humour regardless, leaving me feeling slightly embarrassed but agreeing. When I was journeying home and reflecting on that moment, I found feelings of embarrassment returning, not for the interruption, but for not including David Thoreau as an example of better anti-work thought. I contemplated writing a piece on Thoreau's anti-work aesthetic, but put it to the back of my mind and largely forgot about doing it. Now, after finding myself somewhat frustrated with the work I have been engaged in recent months and the aches and pains I've been experiencing, this unwritten piece has come back to my attention and I find myself writing. I will say now that my anti-work rebellion, while coming from a similar feeling of revolt towards serving industry, looks very different to that of those who embrace the practice of freeganism and or illegalism. My choice to not embrace either of these practices comes in no small part from both seemingly requiring too much effort and ultimately being hard work, with the added lack of desire to find myself in prison. The choice is not hard for me to make. My mind now turns to friends who have used state welfare programs as a means of practicing anti-work rebellion. While I appreciate why these friends, particularly those with young children, chose this means of avoiding the banality of pointless labour and meaningless jobs, I would personally feel revolted were I to find myself in such a dependent relationship with the state. While there are many opponents of the work machine whose writings are valuable and worth affirming, Albert Libertad and Zoe Diaxer immediately spring to mind. Thoreau is without a doubt the individual whose thought on the matter I most appreciate, and whose praxis was most similar to what mine is today. My first readings of Thoreau were as a teenager, done as quickly as possible and from a computer screen, meaning that I had no real appreciation of what I had read. I then reread Walden and Walking during the period of my life that led up to writing my first book, and over the years I reread Civil Disobedience and have read and reread several other pieces, most significantly Life Without Principles. Why should we live with such hurry and waste of life? I wish to suggest that a man may be industrious and yet not spend his time well. Life Without Principles. One of the most significant impacts of my experience being a brain tumor patient and survivor is that I have been intensely committed to not feeling like I am wasting my life experience. Creating music, organising community music events, studying, writing, publishing, exercising, defending and caring for living beings, meditation and personal healing are among those activities that I have engaged in, which have frequently involved great difficulty but have been of intense value and are existentially satisfying. I would not call these activities work. Despite the efforts taken to engage in them, I have done my best to keep these out of industry and productivity. There are definite connections, in the sense that there is no escape, no separation, and all is connected. The industriousness and productivity of individuals I have known and cared for has frequently been horrifying to witness. Several years ago, a friend of mine, to pay off debts, was working night shifts and overtime at a pharmaceutical packaging factory. During this period, he was a wreck. My brother, who has lived away from this archipelago for the majority of his adult life, upon his occasional returns, would spend long hours at the laptop fixated by his work and unable to engage with those around him. I have managed, for the majority of my employed experiences, to avoid employment where the main activity was revolting. When working in care, not mentally well, and seeking to support houses in crisis, I ended up 1 month working two 80-hour weeks by doing too many back to back 16-hour shifts. As a result of industry slowing down due to the global COVID pandemic and many individuals not participating in the workforce, it did not surprise me that the anti work became an increasing topic of conversations. The existential vacuum and intolerable conditions that inhere in the modern workforce became clearly revolting to many who now refuse work. A great many of these COVID inspired anti work advocates make claim that it is simply capitalism that is at fault and that under socialism things would be better. But given what I have learnt of the 996 working hours in China, individuals are at work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, and the Tampinist rebellion against work, such claims are clearly nonsense. Individuals who propose technological developments and automation as solutions to the horrors of the work machine strike me as equally nonsensical. Two other observations by Thoreau come to my mind. Humans have become the tool of their tools, and invention is just improved means to unimproved ends. The work machine is such a waste of life, it is utterly revolting. The occasions when I found myself in existentially valueless employment just to make money for the purpose of engagement with the system were self renouncing to a point that I look back and feel horrified by my choosing to embrace it. I am glad that these have been few and not for long, and also that I can glean some value as experience that reminds me that I find such experiences revolting. The colleagues I encounter in those settings who were most well assimilated into the systems were amongst the most tame, boring, and uninteresting individuals. Naturally, I would seek out relationship with the more brilliant and rebellious individuals I could find for the purposes of workplace solidarity and support. During the few months I worked in a call centre, I found great pleasure in the friendships I made with an anarchist parkour athlete and a queer individual from Ireland. I enjoyed intentionally irritating the office bullies and embracing the practice that Alejandro de Acosta describes as willful incompetence. I sucked the most life I could from that experience through revolt because, as Albert Libertad said, revolt is life. The call centre was the longest period of finding myself in such an existentially barren employment. I am committed to not returning to such revolting work. You must get your living by loving. It is remarkable that there is little or nothing to be remembered written on the subject of getting a living, how to make getting a living not merely honest and honourable, but altogether inviting and inglorious. For if getting a living is not so, then living is not. Life without principles. One of the things that I've constantly appreciated about Thoreau's anti-work philosophy is how much I have found him to affirm activity to make a living. All living beings must engage in activity of some sort or another to live. I deeply appreciate Masumi's affirmation of life as activism / living as unrest. Even activities such as recovering, relaxing, sleeping, lazing, pausing, and idleness are activities, though generally ones of seeking to replenish energies for the purpose of more intense activities. I know that I need all of these to be able to make a living and live. When I was closest to death during cancer treatment, closest to being at rest and non active, I engaged in as much lazing, sleeping, relaxing, and sought as much recovery as I could. I notice now as I write this during a period of feeling frustrated with my employment and experiencing aches and pains from what my employment has been involving, I feel in need of laziness, sleep, relaxation, pausing, idleness, and recovery, so that I may continue to make a living and live well. When reading Walden, I noticed how much Thoreau seemed to value activities that facilitated these experiences. It is also obvious that the work machine punishes laziness, idleness, non-approved pauses, sleeping, or relaxing on the job, and generally provides nothing for recovery, just more existential drain and the promise of rest on the weekend or at retirement. I am glad to be able to share here, sincerely and authentically, that for the majority of my employment have been loving, honest, and honourable, whilst feeling inviting and glorious. This is due to most of my employment being within the context of caring for, supporting, and helping vulnerable young people and children with additional needs. This has meant that a great deal of my activities within these settings have been storytelling, playing, and being someone to shoulder their burdens. The existential fulfillment I have experienced from making a living in such settings has more than made bearable the moments when I have found myself thrust into the institutional structures of the employment where it felt like work. Still, this is not how I wish to make my living for the rest of my life. I have for several years been training as a counsellor and an eco-therapist, which I intend to be my main activity for making a living and supporting my household. Doing the training to engage in this profession might seem to contradict the anti-work desiring that is the focus of this piece. Maybe it is. I'm not above breaking the law of non-contradiction and do not pretend to be without contradictions. However, I have experienced deep existential gratification and joy from moments of being empathetic, congruent, and affirming of friends and loved ones when they have been struggling, as we do with the expectations of rewilding. If I can earn a living that might enable me to survive Leviathan until the point that I am no longer able to live through such activities, then that is something that I intend to pursue. To rebel against the work machine by earning a living through such loving activities strikes me as thoroughly desirable practice. There have been points where it has felt like work, and undoubtedly will be more in the future, particularly when coming into contact with more industrialized aspects of the activity, but I do not believe in escape or separation and see all life as connected, and so am willing to accept these more revolting aspects of these activities. I have one more reflection / thought. I am continually untrusting of individuals who offer systems of or imaginary futures. This comes from my more Nietzschean feelings. Whether it is Marx or Bob Black, I am left somewhat revolted. Thoreau does not do this, or I have never found him to do this in any of his pieces that I have read, other than Civil Disobedience, which is very low intensity systematizing. Following this, I offer nothing of a system for anyone to follow here and would not believe in any I might offer were I inclined to do so. I have sought to provide what I have found when reading Thoreau: perspective and experience. I know this ending will be revolting for anyone wanting a system to follow, but I am prepared to be revolting here, if being revolting means being authentic. Okay, thank you for listening. That was chapter 4, My Rebellion Against Work and Thoreau, from Revolting, Eco-Absurdist Rebellion by Julian Langer, published by Active Distribution. And the next chapter will be Poetry and Praxis. Thank you.